what no one knows is that I am stood right here. Hello, everybody. I'd like to give you a check. Minety Village Hall here in Wiltshire. Bob Nesbitt, you've worked very hard for this, haven't you?
Well, not just me, but everybody here has worked really hard to get these votes, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, just quickly, tell me, what are you spending the money on?
Well, this place is going to be completely revamped now. It's going to be decorated, new lights, new curtains, everything. We're really looking forward to spending the money, we really are.
Okay, and it's going to make a big difference. I know some of you here are probably part of the dance school, are you? Yeah, it's going to make a real difference?
Yeah.
Good news?
Yeah, definitely.
Fabulous. Okay, congratulations to everybody here at Minety Village Hall. Commiserations to Selworthy Parish Hall in Somerset. Will your vote go to the White Lion Park in Malmesbury? Go!
No matter which corner of White Lion Park in Malmesbury you go to, you'll find the same thing. An undervalued space with kit that was first used by the parents of the children who use it today.
I mean, in other playgrounds you've got things you can hide underneath, nice climbing frames, things that are covered. You just don't have that here.
This is basically a sad, unloved, blank canvas.
There's been no change. So the children are expected to play here exactly the same way that we did 20 odd years ago.
Everyone here agrees it's time for a change. Out with the old and in with the new. A park for people of all ages that doesn't need the presence of our cameras to get people to use it.
Oh, we could do so much. We could have trees for shade in the summer, we could have paths, we could have little toddlers area enclosed so the mums can come and sit down and the 2-year-olds aren't getting on the kid for the 16-year-olds.
What do you reckon?
I think it would be fun to play on it.
How much would you use it?
100 million thousand. I would like to play on the spider-like house because it looks very exciting.
Mums and dads could come out, sit down, read a newspaper and the children could play when they weren't worried that they were going to run out on the road or that they were going to get on a piece of equipment that was too big and dangerous for them.
There's little doubt that making the changes to White Lion Park would help draw in the people of Malmesbury, and the reason we know that is because of the things they've done here already. Just putting in these smaller goalposts and shortening the football pitches have helped to draw in more people. So imagine what would happen if they transformed the park into a place that was accessible to people of all ages.
Over time, over the years, it can develop to become, even more amazing. But with the £50,000, we can turn this into a good basic park with bits of equipment for all those different groups of people.
And here's a reminder of that number. To vote for White Lion Park, dial 0870 243 6702 or text West 2 to 63330.
Okay, well, good luck to both of those projects, Albany Green in Bristol and White Lion Park in Malmesbury.
Lion.
But now a special report for tonight's BBC Inside Out West programme can reveal their true story. Here's Jules Hyam.
Churchill said radar did not win the war, but it stopped us from losing it. And I think that was very true.
1940. The skies above Britain are a battleground. Control of the air means control of the country. At the heart of the Allied defence, classified technology produced at a top-secret factory here in Malmesbury.
This is the II Mark IV. It's the first production radar to go into an aircraft, and it was very simple. They would flood the whole area in front of the aircraft with radar pulses, and in order to determine where the target was, you would have 4 aerials on the aircraft, and depending whether that pulse that you received was left, right or up and down, you could determine where the aircraft was.
Work here was so sensitive that even the locals didn't know what was going on or how important the radar was. Now the workers who were once called draft dodgers are being honoured. And tonight, Inside Out West returns to the secret factory with some of the people who helped to make airborne radar a reality. Jules Hyam, BBC Points West.
But you would have passed the spot where the Battle of Britain was won. Well, OK, I know it was won in the skies, but the RAF couldn't have done it without the magic of airborne radar. And that's where Cowbridge House comes in.
It's 1940. The battle for Britain's skies is raging. A lone German bomber is spotted, but is soon lost in the night sky. An RAF Blenheim is scrambled. On board is a revolutionary device that can see in the dark. With just a tiny pulse detecting the invader, the radio operator guides the pilot towards their prey. In seconds, it's over, and the German invader is shot down. History has been made, the first kill made with radar. Called simply the AI Mark IV, it was made by the Echo Company here at Cowbridge House just outside Malmesbury. Once a manor house, its ornate facade became the perfect cover for a wartime factory, a secret factory.
It was my first real job and I was, quite thrilled about it all.
During the war, Charles Exton worked here, but he's not been back for many years.
This is still the main door to the front house. This I remember very well. I don't know whether the main staircase is still there or not.
But this secret history is in danger of fading away.
That's brilliant. It really is. I do remember on one occasion, one of the cleaners, she suddenly stopped halfway through and gave birth, much to everybody's consternation.
Sadly, this old house is under threat of demolition. It could be the last time Charles has to relive old memories.
To think that the whole lot is going to be pulled down is, I think, very distressing. Because it is a building of some importance.
With Charles's eco-historian Chris Poole, he's in no doubt that Cowbridge made a major contribution during the war.
Airborne radar, while it wasn't designed here, it was certainly adapted here for production, and it was built in great numbers during the war and effectively helped clear the skies at night of German raiders.
In his Buckinghamshire Museum, radar enthusiast Norman Groom has collected and restored one of the last surviving Echo sets.
This is the AI Mark IV. It's the first production radar to go into an aircraft, and it was very simple. They would flood the whole area in front of the aircraft with radar pulses, and in order to determine where the target was, you would have 4 aerials on the aircraft, and depending whether that pulse that you received was left, right or up and down, you could determine where the aircraft was.
Target 2 miles.
The radar operator would give instructions to the pilot as to which direction the fighter was in. And the object of the exercise was to keep this target symmetrical about the line. Before then, there was no method of detecting aircraft at close range. You could see formations coming across. You could say there was probably 50 plus aircraft, but you certainly couldn't identify the position of an aircraft sufficient to individually attack it.
Malmesbury's sleepy location made it an ideal choice for Echo to create their factory. But for the people of this ancient Saxon town, the large influx of thousands of workers led to resentment and mistrust.
We're in the High Street, walking up towards the Market Cross. During the war years, Echo actually took over these buildings, and they were used as a place called the Western Development Unit, WDU, known to the locals as the War Dodgers Union. The story went around the town that in fact Cowbridge had been bought by a rich man to hide his draft-dodging sons and their friends away from conscription. There was an awful lot of ill feeling between town and factory. The local Bell Hotel, probably the biggest hotel in the town, at one time actually had a notice over the bar saying that Echo employees will not be served in this bar because of the bad feeling. It didn't last for a long, long time, but it was a difficult situation. You know, the townspeople, they didn't know what was going on because of this secrecy business. And if people aren't informed, of course, you get all sorts of rumours.
And didn't come.
But not everyone was hostile. Local girl Phyllis Elms took a job at the factory, where her supervisor was Charles.
Well, for a start, I can't remember him at all. So that's a good start, isn't it?
I remember exactly where her machine was, and she was always an extremely good worker. She had virtually no rejects, and she was very fast too, as she said.
Yeah,
she got the earned the most bonus.
I didn't spend time in the toilet, put it like that.
When I was first married down there, the only time I saw my wife was when I came off the bus at night shift, and she told me to get on the bus to go home. She was coming in on day shift, so it was tough.
After a 12-hour shift, Charles would often have to do his stint in the local Home Guard. It wasn't just German paratroopers he was looking out for. The RAF were constantly probing the factory's security.
My mate shouted out, "Halt!" He said, "That's not a proper load of hay. Come on, stick your bayonet into it."
Oh, really?
And out scrambled one of the RAF security men. He gave himself up.
Right.
They were up to all sorts of things to try and break in to test our security.
Right.
At the time, none of the staff really knew what they were working on, or their contribution to final victory.
I had no idea at all. I do remember once during the end of the war somebody saying that the radar was successful, and what a wonderful thing it was. I do remember that being.
Christmas 2006, and time has caught up with Cowbridge House. It's a sad day for Charles.
Well, it looks ghastly, but I quite appreciate the fact that, these things happen.
Inside Out West brought Charles back to face the developers. Could it be the last chance to save a little piece of history?
Well, the site's evolving. We're now moving it on. We're not leaving the heritage behind. Although the buildings are coming down, we're pleased to say that there is going to be a business ethics behind what we're doing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Sounds promising. It's too late to save Cowbridge House, but the memory will linger on.
Right, what I've got over here is a piece of stone from the actual house itself.
Yes.
And what we'd like to do with this is to have something etched on it in memory of the work that was done here.
Thank you.
And then have it put into the development itself.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I think it's tremendous that they're acknowledging that there is a heritage on this site which needs preserving and recording.
And the fact that it's going to be remembered, I think is a great tribute to us that worked here, and I'm delighted about the idea. Churchill said radar did not win the war, but it stopped us from losing it. And I think that was very true.
For the very latest, let's cross live to our reporter Robert Murphy, who's just arrived at the scene. Rob.
Yes, this is a remarkable story about an absolutely miraculous escape. Take a look at the scene here. It looks almost like something from a disaster movie. This was about a 500-year-old house in the centre of Malmesbury. At about 4:30 this afternoon, its occupant, a retired man called Jimmy Brown, went to turn on his kettle and the house blew up. We believe it was from a gas explosion. What happened was, because Mr. Brown was at the centre of the explosion, basically the house blew up around him. He was at the centre and he was able to walk out almost over the debris and out of the house to safety. He does have some injuries. He's been burned and got a few scrapes, but apart from that he seems to be okay. People here obviously heard what went on. One of them is a neighbour, is Paul Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys, tell us what happened after you parked your car. You saw it.
Yes, I was standing about to walk back to the house, and then suddenly I heard this enormous boom, and then of course all these debris. I looked over to where the boom came from, and all this debris was flying through the air up, I suppose, about 50 feet, and it sort of came my way. And of course, you immediately take reaction, you sort of take semi-duck, but nothing came as far as I did, and I heard it land on the various houses and to the side street just here.
And what do you think about this just happening? Like a man turns on his kettle and his house blows up. It's remarkable.
It is remarkable. I mean, the fact that he's still alive, I think, is the miracle. He's a very interesting man. He's an international hobbyist.
Okay, Paul Humphreys, thank you very much indeed. As you can see, we're still getting details about exactly what happened. The gas board here is here, the fire brigade are here. We believe, although it's not confirmed, it was a gas escape, but it's going to be a lot longer here before this house is completely made safe. But at the moment, everyone's just happy that Jimmy Brown survived this story.
Rob, thanks very much indeed. Rob Murphy there, live from the scene of that explosion in Wiltshire.
Sea fire crews are now clearing the wreckage of what was, a couple of hours ago, a beautiful Cotswold cottage. What happened around 4:30 this afternoon was the man who lived there, a pensioner called Jimmy Brown, turned on his kettle and it sparked what we believe to be a colossal gas explosion which destroyed his house. But fortunately, Mr. Brown was at the centre of this explosion, so as his house blew up around him, he was almost uninjured. He suffered a few burns, a few scrapes, and people nearby reported seeing him walking through and over the wreckage of what was once his home. This is a story of a remarkable escape from an amazingly large explosion.
Rob, thanks very much indeed for the update there. Yes, smoke's still billowing actually from that house. Lucky escape indeed for the owner.
Who's very close to the scene at the moment. Good evening to you, Lee. What's happened?
There was a huge explosion about 40 minutes ago that shook the whole pub quite violently.
And this was some way away from where you actually are at the moment?
It's about 2 minutes away from us.
So 2 minutes away and your building's shaking. So, and what's happened? A terraced house, I believe, has gone up.
Yeah, there's a huge explosion, and one of the regulars thought that something had hit the front of the pub initially, until we realised it wasn't. It was something behind us.
And any sign at the moment of what's caused this? What was going on at the house?
There's been a lot of gasworks around the town lately, and they're up at that area at the...
Now they're calling it a miracle escape. The man who walked away almost unhurt when his house was wrecked by a massive explosion. Today, as he recovered in hospital, an inquiry began into what caused such a spectacular blast.
And they're also assessing the cost of the damage to the house itself and other neighbouring properties. Early estimates are being put at more than £1 million. Dominic Velitis reports now from Malmesbury.
It's amazing anyone walked away from this, let alone an 80-year-old man. This evening, Jimmy Brown, who's a classical musician, remains in hospital. His condition is described as stable. Unbelievable to many, including those first on the scene.
He was looking back into the house for his dog, Bessie, who he was quite concerned about. In fact, I think he was more worried about her than anything else. I thought he was a bystander who'd been injured in the blast and gone to see if there's anyone in the house. I initially didn't realise he was in the house, because I wouldn't have expected anybody to have been able to survive that sort of blast.
Everywhere you look, you can see the debris that was blown through the air following yesterday's explosion. And here's food for thought. 5 minutes that way is a school. This is a common route that pupils from that school take to go home. If this explosion had happened half an hour earlier, there could well have been fatalities. Today, residents are counting the cost. Amongst the losses, Jimmy Brown's own collection of priceless oboes. Many buildings here are Grade 2 listed. Some date back to the 17th century. Rebuilding all this could top £1 million.
The front window is broken up there. I'm quite lucky because the computer is right there. If I'd been working at the computer, I'd have had a face full of glass. The guttering is broken. There's some tiles off, and there's a hole in the roof at the back. That's my car, and I think it's a write-off. So that's a start. The silver Toyota, I think that's probably written off.
Before yesterday's explosion, engineers from Wales and West Utilities were carrying out work just outside Jimmy Brown's house. At this stage, it's unclear if there is any connection. Dominic Velitis in Malmesbury for the West Tonight.
Investigations have been continuing all day after the explosion yesterday afternoon. Tonight, 78-year-old Jimmy Brown is recovering in hospital after his small stone house in Malmesbury and all his possessions were literally blown up in what looks like a gas leak.
Well, Scott Ellis is at the scene now. Scott.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, it is incredible to think that anyone, particularly a 78-year-old, should survive a blast like that. But that's exactly what Jimmy Brown did. And bear in mind that everything he owns, just about everything he owns, including the clothes that he was wearing, were blown away in the blast. It is an amazing story, and here with more is Tom Burridge.
A pensioner's home for the past 25 years, literally blown away. Bricks and parts of the roof piled up outside and strewn all over the road. Jimmy Brown was in at the time. He now has virtually nothing. His possessions and his house totally destroyed.
He really is not a sort of person to mope over his woes, but really, if you look at what's left of the house, it's very difficult to see, where to go from here.
Our property's just to the left of, just that behind that wall there.
When you look round the back, the force of the blast and extent of the damage become clear. Next-door neighbour John Nichols was blown off his feet by the blast, but unhurt. He then helped Jimmy to get out.
It was just total shock. Such a loudest bang I ever heard. Everything seemed to shake. And then I just sort of looked round and tried to understand what the hell had happened.
Audrey Waters lives the other side of Jimmy's house that was. She too came out unscathed, thankful that no one was badly hurt.
It nearly blew me off my feet because I remember my knees going and I was almost knelt down. And it really was a terrible blast of air.
Jimmy's roof blown onto the house 3 doors down and into the conservatory. And then rain last night for the first time.
Thanks to the upgrading of the old leaky gas mains. Ironic then if work on that safety upgrade did cause Jimmy Brown's house to be blown away. Whether or not it did is now the subject of a health and safety investigation. And it's worth pointing out that if the health and safety executive find out that the leak was more sort of outside than inside, then one of the routes open to them is to prosecute those who are responsible. But let's remind ourselves that their investigation is ongoing. Over here you can see some of the remains of the house. As we say, Jimmy Brown, a keen musician, and this is one of his books that was all about opera. He's in hospital in Salisbury this evening, but he should be out in a couple of days. His dog, incidentally, Bessie, is being looked after by the vets.
Scott, thanks very much. Let's hope both of them get better very quickly. Jimmy Brown is still recovering in hospital with minor burns.
But tonight there's more bad news for his next-door neighbours. Their 300-year-old homes have been so badly damaged they're going to have to be pulled down. Here's our Wiltshire reporter, Tom Burridge.
This was the back of Jimmy's house. And here is where he survived. The kitchen where he flicked the kettle on. His house blew up and then literally collapsed around him.
This is the first time I've actually dealt with a gas blast.
It's an easy mistake to make.
Well, this is Jimmy's kitchen, or what's left of it. An old burnt-out cereal packet, his set of kitchen knives there. And if you look at the way the first floor collapsed, it really gives an impression of how he survived.
Because it's a listed building, is actually take it down rather than knock it down so that they can rebuild it in exactly how it was.
Next door, there's more bad news. On her 34th birthday, Sally needs a new home. Their 300-year-old house is so badly damaged, it's being pulled down.
John and I were engaged, so yeah, it means a lot to us. It's very sweet, yeah. So we planned to be here for a long time. It was an investment for our life.
Yeah, I was just right about here, and obviously it was blown slightly.
Engaged to John, they've only lived in the house for 6 months. As for Jimmy, he's expected out of hospital on Monday. He and his dog Bessie might not have a home to come back to, but they both cheated death. And all things considered, Jimmy's doing well.
His usual self, to be honest, but you don't really know what he's thinking in respect to what's happened. And he hasn't obviously been here and seen what's happened and the commotion around it.
Much of his treasured music didn't survive, but the book he's been writing for 40 years did. Tom Burridge, BBC Points West in Malmesbury.
Barker.
Who's my best dog?
Reunited with his beloved Bessie at last, both of them walked out of the explosion with minor cuts and burns, but now at 78, Jimmy Brown must start all over again.
Well, I just have to sort out my life, really, because I did actually lose virtually everything.
It happened last week when Jimmy Brown switched on his kettle at his home in Malmesbury in Wiltshire. The picturesque town was turned into a scene resembling a war zone. What do you remember about last Monday?
Well, surprisingly much, really. I pressed the kettle on, and there was this amazing sort of whooshing sound. My reaction as soon as the bang started was to go down like that, and I was in a corner, saw that there were flickers of flame in various places, and I thought, I must get out as quickly as possible. I hadn't been hit by anything, particularly on my head, because if I had, that would have been dodgy.
It's believed Jimmy and Bessie escaped because they were in the epicentre of the blast.
And then I said, where's Bessie? Has anybody seen Bessie? And somebody went out and said, Bessie's been found, she's okay. And so apparently when she was on a drip, she was at the same time wolfing down her supper, so can't be too much wrong with Bessie.
An investigation is still continuing to find out what caused the devastation. It's thought that several of the 17th century cottages will have to be demolished. Jimmy has no idea when or if he'll return home.
This is just a new beginning, really. Obviously my life will change because I've had a miraculous escape.
While Bessie seems to be enjoying the limelight, she's already received an offer to be a celebrity guest at a dog show. Jimmy simply wants to go back to normal life. Although he may be unclear what that is at the moment, he can be sure Bessie will be by his side. Ellie Barker in Malmesbury for the West Tonight.
Tom, how's Jimmy?
Well, Alex, Jimmy was fairly relaxed and cheerful when I spoke to him earlier this morning. Considering all that he's been through, and considering the fact that where his 300-year-old listed building once stood, there's now a green plastic sheet. In fact, he was fairly blasé about the whole affair. He said he wasn't shocked or scared when his house collapsed all around him. He simply stood up and walked out the door.
But I was so lucky, I mean incredibly lucky. I wasn't hit by any flying debris. I wasn't hit on the head, so I was absolutely all there. And just bemused rather than dazed.
Lucky to survive, unlucky to lose his house and all his possessions.
Only when I got to Swindon, casualty, that I suddenly thought, you know, the only things that are probably left now are the things I'm standing up in.
Jimmy arrived home, went into the kitchen and switched the kettle on. His house then blew up. Somehow he emerged with only minor burns to his hands and face. Work's been going on here for weeks, the gas company replacing old pipes. Since the explosion, residents are understandably nervous.
On Friday night, someone down here on the Triangle, just round the corner from Jimmy's house, smelt gas. And residents were evacuated from their houses.
And this man's partner also smelled gas. The gas company weren't taking any chances.
They came up, checked the meters and everything inside, which was fine. Then the guy came out here and had a test at the pavement. Gas.
So actually pulled the pavement up?
Yeah, pulled the pavement back up again, the slabs are there. And there was a gas leak.
There was definitely a gas leak?
Yeah, definitely. That's what he said, there's a gas leak.
Jimmy, though, he seems pretty relaxed. The damage now hidden to passers-by, he hopes his house can be rebuilt.
Well, I've got a statement from Western Wales Utilities. They're the gas company carrying out the work outside Jimmy's front door and in the local area. Now, they say they have had a number of reports from people of low-level gas leaks. Those were quickly repaired, and importantly, they say these pose no risk to the public. Now, they're monitoring the situation. They say safety is their highest priority. And, of course, the investigation into what caused the explosion here at Jimmy's house is ongoing. But as we know, those investigations, those type of investigations, tend to take a long time. Back to you.